In years of research, categorizing and looking for bizarre entities and humanoid reports worldwide, Albert Rosales has run into quite a few outlandish descriptions of bizarre entities encountered by different people from different parts of the world. Forget the tall blonde, the popular greys, even the reptilians. There are apparently others out there that have left the witness or witnesses wishing for an encounter with a much more normal, Zeti Reticulian grey. One group that have been seen a lot lately are the ones who have been labelled Becks, or the Black-Eyed Kids. He urges caution in dealing with these entities and do not acquiesce to any of their requests. For example, ask to be let in or use the phone. One of the earliest reports of a cyclopean-type entity, a not-so-common humanoid type, even though it has been reported in modern times, originated from outside the town of Melong, Thailand, around August 1810. The report from well-known Malaysian entity researcher Ahmad Jamaluddin states that on a road outside the city, a Dr. Jacob Hazlitt, a missionary, reported that he saw a man dressed in silver clothing. He described the skin of the humanoid as gleaming and that the entity had only one eye. But it doesn't end there. A month after, around September, in the same city or town of Meklong, again in Thailand, one night, a local Siamese woman was awoken by an unknown force and was surprised to hear that the surrounding area was devoid of the usual animal noises. Looking out of the window, the woman beheld a strange humanoid in her backyard. She claimed that the humanoid had only one eye and was dressed in a suit which seemed to be made out of a metal. The episode ended with the woman claiming to have been abducted into a palace of lights. An early abduction report, perhaps? We'll never know. This next report comes from Greek researcher Thanasis Vembos, who has graciously shared many of the humanoid reports he has investigated in Greece. It comes from near the area of the famous ancient kingdom of Sparta in Greece. It briefly states that two men hunting in an isolated area heard a sound like a baby screaming. They then saw a dwarf-like creature, about 2 feet tall with long hair and sharp teeth. He found the report in a book of Greek folklore by Nikolaos Politis called Traditions. Interesting indeed, a survivor of some sort of Iron Age or Stone Age tribe? We can only conjecture. In the excellent book by Graham J. McEwen, titled Mystery Animals of Britain and Ireland, there are a number of bizarre encounters recounted. The following one is the most interesting. It occurred near Woodseaves, Shropshire, England on January the 21st, 1879, when a horrible black humanoid with huge shining eyes jumped out of the trees and landed on the horse's back. The man tried to push the creature off, but it would not budge and the whip seemed to go through it. The horse panicked and went into a gallop with the creature clinging to it. The creature eventually disappeared and the man arrived at his home in a state of shock. What do we have here? A sort of spectral, interdimensional wayfarer? One afternoon in the small village of Brantkymia region of Finland, a young woman, mother of 3, was picking berries in the forest when she saw something resemble a kettlecock. Besides the kettle stood an elf-like creature carrying something resembling an axe on his shoulder. Terrified, the young woman returned to her village. After a couple of hours, she returned to the location with other villagers, but the kettlecock and the elf were gone. Perhaps a typical CE3 report. The small humanoid or elf was possibly carrying some type of apparatus which was misinterpreted as an axe. Nordic alien giants are said to be 6 to 8 feet tall and are often the overseers of alien abductions by the Greys. They aren't as malevolent as some of the other alien species we've talked about. But why do they oversee these abductions? What is their real agenda? Are they part of a council that allows this type of behavior and they oversee the process because they want to make sure they don't harm us any more than is needed? They're almost Swedish looking and they're always white and have blonde hair. They're both males and females, each equally as big. There are a lot of contactees that speak of these Nordic giants, but their choices of people that they indeed make contact with is very strange. Who says there are no such things as little green men? Well, if the following cases are true, then make room, little greys. The first incident is from researcher Keith Roberts from the veteran Tasmanian UFO research group TUFOIC. It supposedly took place around midnight on February 1948 in the small town of Berrydale, Tasmania, Australia. Two witnesses standing in their back garden sighted a bright, round object hovering low above them. Sitting on the edge of the object were several small green-coloured humanoids that appeared to be making a weird singing sound. The object eventually drifted out of sight. Some other sources have indicated that the tune of the weird singing sound was that of the children's melody Three Blind Mice. 4 years before that incident, in late August 1944 in the locality of Christchurch, New Zealand, while walking among low hills, Mrs. E.M. Church encountered an upturned saucer sitting on a gentle slope hidden from the road. She walked up to it and stared for 8 to 10 minutes. Small, not over 4 feet, occupants were seen inside transparent cases. The one of three, outside, was just a green-coloured entity in a transparent box-like casing, just standing there. Neither head, arms nor legs were discerned. A cloud came down and enveloped them. She walked closer to within 20 feet. When the one outside noticed her, his helmet flipped over automatically and he drifted into the vehicle. The door was closed. The object itself, 8 to 20 feet across and 9 feet wide, seemed to be covered with vertically laid tiles resembling wood veneer, with a central circle of aluminium-like metal. From the center rose something like a piece of 4-inch pipe as long as your arm, capped with aluminium. Midway on this mast was a blue light. A whirring noise commenced and the object slowly rose vertically into the clouds. According to the witness, I felt a deep sense of loss. The last green humanoid story to report is from the Italian humanoid encounter wave of 1978, and the following is a summary of a case. Location: Torrita di Siena, Italy. Signora Ultimina Boscali and her son Riccardo, aged 12, heard an intense noise. It was like a round of artillery fire, and from where they were standing in the street in front of their house on the Via Paglioti, they looked up to see a fireball with a yellow-orange contours and a reddish trail. Suddenly, in a blinding dazzle, the object vanished. The lower part of the round-shaped object had been seen to be reddish in color and very bright white in the upper part. Signora Boscali and her son were so frightened that they retreated quickly into their house. Other witnesses of the phenomenon were Signora Santina Farali and her son Rivo, aged 25. Signora Farali was indoors watching television, and she heard the noise and was aware of the dazzling light outside. Indeed, the electric light, she said, was extinguished suddenly, but then came back on. Soon after that, Rivo, a barber by profession, arrived at the house where he stayed for about half an hour. Then at about 2100 hours he left, got into his car, a Fiat 127, started up and moved off. He had only gone a few meters when it stalled and stopped, the electrical system having ceased to operate. While he was still puzzled, a strange bright object preceded by a beam of red light landed on the road in front of him. It was so bright that it illuminated the area around it. The object had a diameter of 3 meters and it covered all of the carriageway, at the same time touching a dry stone wall with only one edge. It hung in the air at about the height of the Fiat 127's bonnet. Suddenly on this object, presumably a UFO, port opened in the fashion of a double door, one part to the left, the other to the right. Two beings emerged and proceeded down from the object. They were about 1 meter to 110 meters in height, and they descended in a fluctuating motion until they were about 10 centimeters from the ground. In that position, their heads were level with Rivo Farali's face as he sat in his car, and it was this that enabled him to estimate the entity's height. Rivo saw that they had green coveralls and big helmets, and that part of these helmets were transparent. The creature's skin seemed also to be green, and while their faces were to a degree human-like, they were flat and lean with bony, arched cheeks, regular noses, and thin-lipped mouths. The shapes of their limbs were visible, and their proportions appeared normal as they walked towards the car. They seemed to have more interest in the car than in its owner, and when they were behind him he could still see them by way of the driving mirror. In fact, Rivo noticed that their awkwardness seemed more marked. After completing the round trip, they headed back to the UFO. Before entering the object, the second entity turned back and looked at the witness as though he wanted to say something, then checked, turned away, entered the strange craft and took position beside his companion. The port shut, and from the lower part of the body came two very intense beams, whereupon the craft rose vertically for about 10 meters, then shot away in level flight, leaving a bright horizontal trail. As the UFO disappeared, the headlights of the Fiat came back automatically, and since the gears were still engaged, the car started to move forward and without any action by Revo Fiali. Signor Fiali had not touched the controls when the craft first appeared, as he was at first stupefied and bewildered, and then almost paralyzed with terror. For 3 days after the incident, Revo experienced burning eyes. It was reported that in the next street, at about 21:30 on the evening, several television receivers went off for about a minute and then returned to normal operation. At the scene of the landing in the middle of the carriageway, there was a black circle 50 centimeters in diameter, which appeared to have been caused by considerable heat. The chupacabra has often been seen in Mexico and a lot of South America, like Brazil. They also perform many cattle mutilations in a very gruesome manner, not like the Greys that use lasers to perform their surgeries. The stories are often covered up by the government. Their name in Spanish means goat suckers because they prefer goats as their primary food source. These guys may not even be aliens, they could just be a genetic experiment, a result of toxic chemicals or radiation, or just an unknown predator that is yet to be discovered. They are said to have glowing red eyes like the reptilians, and they can run very fast. If you see one of these, your best bet is not to run like hell, because they will not only chase you and suck you like a goat, these guys are scary looking. And there are many more pictures floating around the internet if you want to check it out.